Great pleasure to welcome you all to this very first Stats Café, Asia Pacific Statistics Café.
Thank you so much, and hello and welcome to everybody who's joined us for this celebratory event about the stats cafes. We just saw where it all started, and my name is Kaveh Zahidi. I'm the Deputy Executive Secretary here at UN ESCAP, and I'm delighted to open up our session today. As you saw from that video, the first Stats Cafe was held in May of 2020, and it was all about accessing and using subnational population estimates in Asia and the Pacific, and that was really the start of a magnificent journey. And the Stats Cafes have covered a whole slew of different topics. At the beginning, of course, there was quite a focus on helping countries to try to cope with the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts it was having, of course, on our stats communities. And then the sessions evolved from there and moved into other areas of interest like big data and so on. And our stats cafes were the Asia Pacific stats cafes, and the focus has been and will continue to be on Asia Pacific. But we have seen more and more countries and individuals joining from all over the world. So I think that they really have struck a chord, and they're found to be useful in an even broader context than just our region. We continue to see very, very strong engagement with these sessions that we run. And I think it's stronger engagement, especially from, I don't know whether you would call them high-level technical people, practitioners, people who are looking for very real-life solutions to very real challenges that they're facing in their everyday work. And that's where the Stats Cafe really provides this sort of almost informal way for countries to quickly share lessons and challenges with each other, to learn from each other, to pick up solutions from each other and be able to almost implement immediately. And while we find these to be amazing opportunities, and we've really very much enjoyed them, after what's now 2 years, we did want to take this opportunity to celebrate a little bit all that has been achieved, but also to take stock and look at how we can ensure that these sessions continue to be useful, continue to really be fit for purpose, to serving many of you who have joined us today, to serve the statistical community in Asia and the Pacific in particular, and to make sure this is serving our key priority audiences. We will be hearing from a range of countries, from Georgia to Thailand to Fiji and others, who will share with us their experiences and their ideas for these sessions, taking stock of what's happened in the past, but also some guidance for us moving forward. Last but not least, of course, we're very lucky to have Gemma van Hulderen with us today. Gemma was the former director of the Statistics Division and I guess the founder, or at least one of the founders of this Stats Cafe. So really happy, Gemma, that you're able to join us. But before we hear from Gemma and from the other panelists, let me finish there by again thanking you all for joining us and passing over to our current director of the Statistics Division, Rachel Bevan, who is going to be moderating this session. So Rachel, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kaveh, and thanks also to the team who put the great video together, and a huge thank you to everyone for coming today as well to help us in this celebration. So as Kaveh's set out, we really wanted to both celebrate but also look at what we can learn from what we've done and think about the future, and really to make sure that, you know, after 2 years, are these Stats Cafes still fit for purpose? I know they were very much set up to deal with the kind of COVID-19 pandemic and the particular challenges facing national statistics offices at that time. So we just want to make sure that we're still getting what we can out of them. So we've got a great panel joining us today. As Kaveh already said, we've got Gemma Van Helderen, who's General Manager now at Enterprise Strategy and Communications Division in Australia Bureau of Statistics. But she's joined as well. We've got Mr. Gugita Todrades, who's the Executive Director for Georgia National Statistical Office. We've got Dr. Pianuch Wutison, who's Director General here in Thailand in the National Statistical Office. Welcome. We've got Ms. Maria Taledi Musudroka, who I think was just having problems with the camera, but she's also joining us. She's Acting Chief Executive for Fiji Bureau of Statistics. And last but definitely not least, we've got Mr. Bakdavar Batmunk, who's chairperson at National Statistics Office in Mongolia. So we've got a really wide range of people we've tried to get people from across the whole region. But what we also want to do today, we've got the panel and we've got some specific questions to ask them, but we will also be asking the audience as well and doing some polling questions as we go through, because we do want to hear from everyone. And I can see now we've got 99 people, according to my screen, who've joined online. So that's just a huge it's a huge number. It's just this really, really great opportunity to hear from so many kind of different people, so many different perspectives. But what we wanted to start with, a very easy question to all the panelists, was to tell us about their favourite Stats Cafe and why it was their favourite, and also just to say whether or not they've been able to use any tools or apply any knowledge from the Stats Cafe in their own work. So I was just going to say briefly, I remember, I'm not sure if it was my favourite, possibly it was. The first Stats Cafe I attended was about 15, 16 months ago, and I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to be able to be there at 5 in the morning. But because it was such an interesting topic on big data, I was happy to get up at that time. So I didn't mind it at all. And it was definitely worth getting up. Developments and kind of got to the... So going around the panel, I will change the order as we go through the questions. But for this one, we'll start with Gemma. So tell us about your favourite Stats Cafe. Thanks.
Oh, thank you very much, Rachel and Kaveh, for the invitation here today, and my congratulations and happy birthday, happy anniversary
as well about what
Cafe series. This has to be one of the most difficult questions that's ever been put to me, Rachel. Which of the cafes was my favourite? I have to say all of them have been favourite of mine. When we first set this series up, it was an opportunity to bring all of the member states from across the region together, and so to me, all the cafes where we've heard from as far away as Georgia, from Mongolia to the Pacific and Fiji, like we have today, as well as also from Bangkok and Thailand, all of those have been particularly favourite. I also just wanted to say the other favourite cafes that I really enjoyed was when we brought the young statisticians into the cafes, and we heard not only from the executive and the general managers who are leading our stats offices, but also the youth and the young statisticians that are the next generation working with our business. So I really did enjoy cafes that brought the youth together through this series. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much. And then moving on, if we can go to Georgia, Gugita. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to say that it is my pleasure to greet all of you today on behalf of the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat, on the occasion of the 2-year anniversary of Stat Café series, and express my sincere gratitude for the productive cooperation with Georgia. As of my favorite Stat Cafes concerned, bearing in mind a growing need for high quality statistics in our era and taking into account that reliable data represents the basis for evidence based and good decision making, I'd like to single out this session entitled Unlocking the Value of Data for All, which was held on 9 of May 2022. I was honored to be invited as a panelist of this session, main topics of which addressed to the role of the national statistical offices in embedding data use in decision making, barriers hindering data use, multi-stakeholder approaches, and skills required for sustained data use by uh, decision makers. No doubt that the very purpose of official statistics is providing impartial quality information on relevant matters, and high quality official statistics play an important role in the decision making process of various different users, such as policymakers, researchers, and civil society as a whole. The policymakers in Georgia, as in other developing countries, are regularly faced with the task of answering complex questions, and making difficult decisions, and to support informed decision making, we have defined production of statistical information to support evidence-based decision making as one of the objectives of the strategy of national statistical system in Georgia.
Thanks very much. Really interesting. And then moving round to Thailand, Dr. Pianuch, if you wouldn't mind sharing your reflections. Thanks.
Hello to all, and this is my second time to be a panelist in Stat Cafe session. First of all, would like to congratulate it to celebrate 2 years of the Stat Cafe. I think, as Cafe said, it's very useful and also helpful session for statistical office. And like Gemma said, to answer favorite session, it's quite difficult, but I try to make it into singular answer as I make a small discussion with my colleagues, Thai NSO colleagues. They have made it one singular session that they like most, that is the session held on April the 4th, 2022, that is emerging trend and the use of administrative data in Asia Pacific census. And rationale that why we like most for this session, because if we date it back to the time that the first COVID-19 hit, that is the time that Thai NSO planned to schedule a field work of uh, the census, the population, and how. Well, thank you very much. Over to you, Raj. Because of the 19, from that time, we started to think hard and carefully to alternative data sources, and then we interested in the administrative data or register-based data. And we have quite a number of work done by UN organization, for example, hybrid census that we work with UNFPA, and also have various advice and discussion with knowledgeable and resource person in this area via virtual meetings as well. And another thing that I would like to make a support of this, because we have our own application of using knowledge that stem from that session. We have the use of the register-based data or administrative data on the agriculture census 2023. We have three governmental agencies that we work with, so that that is very useful and helpful, and we make it into the groundwork, and that is very helpful to us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really interesting to see the range of different things that kind of capture people's attention for different reasons. So thank you for that. I think we'll move to Mongolia next, and then we'll come to Fiji, if that's okay. So Mr. Bhatdavar, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And first of all, we really appreciate the ESCAP and the colleagues for inviting us to share our experiences on the eve of this 2-year anniversary of the Stats Café. So I shall say that we really appreciate the initiative for having this Stat Cafe for specific topics. All of them are important to our works. For example, building a sustainable business register, which we did establishment census last November, and we took some of the ideas discussed during this cafe to implement some of the good ideas into our works. And also, as for the specific topics, I can mention about the use of completion of the input and output tables in policy making, which is also important, especially when it comes to Mongolia, which we have a very high import dependency on the economic sectors. And among these cafes, I can mention that similar to Gogita, the unlocking the value of data for all was very effective for me, at least because I took part of the event as a panelist. So the key message from this cafe was that effective use of data in evidence-based decision making is really important. And secondly, it's very important to maintain the sustained use of data by the policymakers to support the evidence-based decision making. And thirdly, during the cafe, we also stressed out that importance of the cooperation between the different government organizations and the people to promote the sustained use of the data in the decision making. And fourth, the data literacy is very important, at least for the
user engagement process.
They make any decisions. So these were are the main things we stressed out. And the recommendations was to build the culture of the data use among the government officials and improve the data literacy among the government officials. And based on the Stat Cafe discussions, I can mention about 3 things we have implemented in addition to our existing works we've been doing with, in cooperation with our other government organizations. The first is we have initiated a training program for the government officials to use our statistical integrated database, which is 1212 MN. So last year we have held about, I think it's now around 10 rounds of training to the Parliament Secretariat staff to use the data when drafting the law or when the draft law is in discussion at the Parliament level. And now we are planning to hold 2 rounds of training for government officials.
You're in Australia, if that's okay, but
there's statistical production. For example, the officials who are doing the Ministry of Education's statistics would be trained for these purposes, so that we can improve the data literacy and the skill in using the data for their sector. It's very important. And secondly, just about 10 days ago, we got a special data literacy project approved by the UNICEF here in Mongolia. So about 50,000 USD would be earmarked to promote the data literacy in Mongolia. So under this project, we will be producing about 13 short videos explaining the main methodology and the data sources behind one of the key indicators of the statistics that we produce, and also about 89 posters will be disseminated with the financing of this UNICEF project. So it will be like trying to educate the public to use of the data, and also as we mentioned during the this Stats Café, we have this ongoing UNICEF-funded project to make our integrated website more user-friendly for the public. So we are planning to have our new website to be open for the public starting from the July 1st. So these are the good applications with the Mongolian government discussed during the Stats Café, and we really appreciate the initiative from the Gemma and the colleagues for starting this, and we will be participating the following events very actively. And thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear how you're actually applying what you're learning and how much you're kind of benefiting from the kind of sharing of what's going on in other countries. So that's exactly why we set them up. So that's fantastic. I'm hoping that Maria is also able to join us from Fiji and share her reflections. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you. I've actually enjoyed every session that I've joined in, and thank you for the invitation to be part of the panel today. One of the Stats Café, what I'd say one of my favorites was because of the fact that ESCAP is actually at the moment providing technical support on civil registration vital statistics project. The relevancy of access mortality, which was held on the 20th of April, was of brilliant importance in terms of data in the fight against COVID-19. So what we had done this year was conduct a workshop on the 6th of April and working with the Fiji Access Mortality Report in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, of which we are currently working on a report. So we've also had assistance from the vital strategies via a technical advisor who also did a training on the, who facilitated a training on excess mortality. So the Stats Café came at a really, at a time when we were all really working on this particular activity. So I'm quite thankful that it came just in time. You know. Yeah, thank you.
So that's great. Thank you very much. It's good that we're able to do these things at the right time, because that's also important, not just sharing experiences, but being able to do it at the right time, so we can really kind of get the maximum benefit from each other. We wanted to move on and actually think about, you know, the fact that it has been 2 years and these cafes were really set up to respond to the kind of COVID-19 pandemic. So we wanted to really hear from people around, you know, are they still fit for purpose? But as we're doing that, I also wanted to ask Goy, can you put up the first poll? So we've now got at least 120 people, according to my screen, who've joined online. So we want to actually hear from all of you. So the first kind of very simple question we had was just to hear from you about how often you actually attend.
Fit these needs.
Most of the weeks, monthly, less frequently. So if you can just put up, Goy's putting up that. So all you need to do is just click on that. You can either do it in the chat bar or on your screen. And once you've clicked on that, you can submit it and you can close that from your screen so it doesn't block your view of all our great panelists. So as you're doing that in the background, we can see that going on. And then I was going to come back to the panelists going in a slightly different order to hear from you about what do you actually think are the stats cafes, you know, now that it's been 2 years, are they still fit for purpose? So if it's okay, I'm going in reverse order just to change things around a bit. So that means we're going to, we'll go to Mongolia first, if that's okay. Matt Batavar, can we go to you first, then we'll come to Fiji. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much again. My answer would be very short. I think the Stat Cafe is still fit for the purpose, and because it's very effective. I mean, it's just 1 hour or so, so we can have a very insightful experience sharing among our colleagues. We can do that in a very short time. So we can also choose among the topics that we really think is important or priority for our works. So I think it really fits for the purpose, and then I think we should continue this initiative in the future. Thank you very much, Rachel. Over to you.
Thanks very much. And as we move around as well, I mean, if you could tell, yeah, are they fit for purpose, but also any recommendations on what you think as well about have we got the right kind of mix of country presentations versus discussion? We're going to move on to a polling question on that as well, you know, about the format. So it's good from what you said about the length is about right. So it'd be good to hear specifically what do others think, but also, yeah, if there are any reflections on the kind of format as well, have we got the right format? So if we move on, if we go to Maria in Fiji, thanks.
Yes, the medium of communication via Stats Cafe is very much ineffective via the restrictions in place. However, maybe in the future, one might need to consider providing an opportunity to discuss probably or bridge the gap between official statistics and users. Maybe we need to engage the other side of the coin, I'd say, for those who are actually using statistics, because we have very much discussions around the technicalities of statistics. Maybe we need to hear from those who are actually using statistics. Thank you.
Thank you. That's an interesting reflection. We'll kind of go through on this, and I might come back to other people because as everybody says things, it kind of raises more thoughts, doesn't it? So we might kind of come around a bit more as well. But if we go on to Thailand, Dr. Pianuch, any reflections? Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. My answer is yes. Stat Cafe is still fit with the situation. We know that COVID-19 will never yet go away from us. And of course, we might need to work in the new circumstance after COVID-19 as well. Whether or not it is called new normal or next normal, we really need to work on that. And not just only COVID-19. I think in the world of collection of statistical data, we have less and less cooperation. This is in the case of Thailand, that is very, very much increasing in this circumstance. But perhaps I can propose for the format of the Stat Cafe, we might work on quarterly basis rather than every month. And we might expand to a hybrid session, perhaps, if we would like to start. That means we need on-site session as well, because although virtual session, it's easy to go in and it's easy to go out as well, and it is hard to discuss in depth. And as such, I think it's still important, and we might consider the on-site session. And another thing is perhaps you can consider, besides that cafe that is the virtual session that offer help, we might consider to offer a kind of online clinic that we can we can post any issue that we would like to get help, and so that ESCAP and statistical
Thank you for all those great ideas.
respond and feedback to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just having to write down these things to make sure I don't lose kind of track of all of these great ideas. And yeah, we definitely agree with you. These are not meant to replace the in-person kind of face-to-face interactions that we're all probably dying for. You really want to kind of get back to be able to do more of those, don't we? So we'll have to kind of keep thinking about that. And we certainly hope our committee on statistics in August, we can actually see most people in person. So we're really looking forward to that event as being one of our first kind of in-person ones, and looking at how we can make sure we use that one. Moving on, Georgia, Gagita, reflections from you. Thank you.
So, what is our meeting goal today? To mark the 2-year anniversary of the Stats Café series within the panel discussion format, and to celebrate the successes of this of the Stats Café series in terms of reviewing the development in light of the challenging COVID-19 pandemic, and discuss the best ways forward to leverage the wide reach of future of the webinar series. Uh, NSOs around the world, we are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic with a variety of new statistical solutions. Within the framework of the Asia Pacific Stats Cafe series, we have discussed the experiences of our countries and development partners standing up COVID-19 data portals, and the responses from users to their innovating data solutions. Regional events such as the Asia Pacific Stats Cafe series, where appropriate forums for sharing the experiences and learning from one another on different topics. We had a long list of concluded events behind us, which addressed both subject matter statistics such as labor market, national accounts, business registers, energy, transport statistics, and cross-cutting issues like inclusion of user needs. Increased use of administrative data, so quality statistics, gender-related issues, and SDG indicators, covering from use of administrative data in Asia Pacific till statistics that leave no one behind, inclusive data charter. Excuse me. I was privileged to participate in Asia Pacific Stat Cafe series from the very beginning, attending the first session dedicating to the occasion of 50 years of statistical capacity building by a UN Statistical Institute for Asia and the Pacific in 2020. From the perspective of alumni chief statisticians, all the sessions behind us strengthened my,
Or if not,
remained as one of the important actors in the development of statistical capacities in the Asia Pacific region, and the role of ESCAP should be further enhanced in supporting the evidence-based policy and decision making for sustainable development. Thank you. Over to you.
thanks so much. Really interesting. It's great to have your engagement as well, having been involved right from the beginning. And I also want to move to Gemma, who obviously was kind of around right from the beginning, and knows a lot more about the history. But over to you on your thoughts and reflections. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And yeah, really great question. So this series started, as we've all heard, in May 2020. It was about 2 months after the UN Statistical Commission meeting in New York, where many of us attended, and it was like the last event that we had come together as the global statistical community, and we couldn't travel anymore, and we also had, we were so busy trying to manage COVID-19 in our statistical operations, but also in our personal lives. So as you know, 85 sessions later, two years on, we've had 85 sessions, and I still believe that this series is as relevant today as it was 2 years ago. For many of us across the region, we still either can't travel, or either for COVID reasons, or for economic reasons, or for, you know, our governments are wary of us travelling. This series also has brought us a diversity of speakers from across the region that we weren't getting in many of our training programs or our workshops. For many of the workshops that capacity building workshops, you know, we might have been able to manage 20 odd countries coming together, whereas now we've embraced all of the countries in the region. And as we heard at the start, even worldwide, we're getting reach beyond the 20 or so countries that we were able to support. What I've also liked about the Cafe series is it's brought both developing and developed nations together. So for many of the capacity building programs that ESCAP and other UN partners were hosting, often they were only developing countries. That's just the nature of a lot of the funding and investment available. So it was very hard for countries that, like my own, Australia, often weren't at those capacity building programs. And so this Cafe series has been open to all, and countries like my own, Australia, are gaining a lot of insight and information from hearing from other speakers about what we're doing, like the value of statistics, business registers, civil registration that we've heard of today. The other aspect I wanted to highlight here is that this webinar series was a capability building tool in its own right. So if you remember back 2 years ago, you played a little snippet of the very first Cafe series. We had headphones on, but look at us now. Many of us aren't wearing headphones. Many of us have worked out how to put backgrounds onto Teams. We've learned how to do presentations in the digital age. So to me, this series has also built digital skills in the presenters as well as in the audience. And those digital skills are really valuable, not just in the international sphere, but also in your local, in the national situation, where you're also, like we heard from Mr. Badva, about the training of the politicians, you know, and the use of these digital skills that we've developed through this series may well have helped that. And then finally, we are all very busy people, and just like to reflect back on that first comment there. These series have been a very relatively cheap investment of our time and resources for great return. If we were having to travel to a workshop for our colleagues in the Pacific, it's like 2 days to travel to Bangkok before you get to the workshop. So you might lose a whole week to go to a 2-day workshop in Bangkok, whereas here, where the investment might be at most, you know, 2 or 3 hours to prepare and deliver. So to me, this is a really great investment of time for very busy people. Thank you very much, Rachel. It's a great question to invite us all to speak to. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing all of those different reflections and different perspectives. Just looking at the audience polling, so from what we can see from those who have responded, over half of the people actually are coming most weeks, which I think is very interesting, and probably again is a kind of testament to that. It's not so much effort, is it, to kind of, like you say, to kind of join online, and even if it's not a topic that's necessarily kind of, you know, directly related to the work you're doing, there's so many that are of interest anyway, and I think have been really kind of interesting that you kind of actually are stepping out sometimes beyond your normal kind of work area to hear about, you know, what's actually going on in some of these other areas. So and it is a kind of a concentrated investment of time just for 1 hour. So that's really interesting to see how many people are joining today. Like I say, we've got well over 100 people, so that shows as well the real value. And I'm seeing as well in terms of the responses on the kind of format that I think, you know, and a huge testament to the people setting it up, that I think we have got a really good format there because we've got that mix of country presentations and some discussion. So I think, you know, that's definitely something we want to kind of make sure that we can continue to build on. I mean, another kind of quick reflection I had as well is I think it really is helpful to have the kind of informal way that we can share. So we don't necessarily have to wait for a piece of work till it's actually formally kind of, you know, gone through all kinds of developments and kind of got to the end result, but we can actually share things as we go along at a bit more of a kind of interim stage. And I think there's a real kind of value in doing that as well, because you can then kind of learn more as we're going along rather than waiting till we finish developing something and then sharing it, say, with other countries. As we go on, we wanted to think a bit more as well about what future topics and subjects would we like cafe sessions to actually focus on. So we've got another audience poll. So Goy is going to put up a word cloud. So for the word cloud, if you can just put in 1 or 2 words, this is to all the audience, just put in a couple of words of what you would like to cover. Don't put in a whole sentence, or word clouds don't work very well. But if you can just kind of say just a couple of words about the topics that you're really interested in, then that will really help us. I mean, I have to say, one of the biggest struggles that we actually have at the moment, which is a good struggle to have, is about how we fit in the sessions. And we've actually got quite a long list at the moment of people who want to run the Stats Cafe. And it's great as well that we're getting more and more people coming to us. So we've had one, you know, the World Bank or UN Statistics Division or other organizations, and they're saying things like, oh, we've heard about your Asia Pacific Stats Cafe, please can we present on our work? So it's great that we have that, but we really want to hear from you as well about what are those topics that you really want to hear about and you would like to know a bit more about. So I'm going to go in a slightly different order. I'm aware that Dr. Pianuch, you need to go slightly early. So if we come to you first of all, and then we'll go to Georgia, Australia, and go through that order just to run it through. And also in the chat, please do feel free to put any up, you know, if you want to come in with a comment afterwards, we will get to that as well. But over to you, Dr. Pianuch. Thank you.
Rachel, thanks. For this one, I think very important that we'll pave the way forward of Stack Cafe as well. Me, for future cafe, what would be focusing on? I think we need to look at the area of innovation work for statistical offices. I think in the case of Thailand as well, we need to consider about statistical capability of each statistical office as well. As I read quickly on the work of Brookings Institute, it said that new breakthrough technology make it possible to disrupt the way we collect, we process, and analyze data. And this is the technology that they use, that is satellite and also AI, uh, to monitor the poverty of particular countries. And in this circumstance, I would say that far beyond the statistical capability of Thai NSO as well. So that in this case, that means I would like to focus on the support from ESCAP in this area. At least we really need to learn from, and in case we need to make it into the ground, how to do that. Because we listen to this kind of thing or read it over and over, but we don't know how to work on it well. But so we are thrilled when we look at that work. That is the area that I really need to focus on. That is innovation of work. So that we really need to work on the context of data revolution. I think we have talked a lot about statistical data, and we have to work on big data as well. We haven't yet known well the way to analyze the so-called data analytics. Right now, I understand that even big data or data sources not from survey or census may not be fully accepted in broadly, but in terms of the value of big data is still valuable. It can make any decision making, and it can supplement in some area that we cannot go into and to get information. So that I still look forward to seeing any work related to innovation work for statistical office, and also need to base on statistical capability of particular offices, for example, Thai NSO as well. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rachel. Thank you very much. And may I say goodbye from this point. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really, really helpful. We're making a note of all of these ideas, so they're not going to go unmentioned. We will make sure we come back to all of them. I think if we go next to Mr. Gurgita, Georgia, if that's okay. Thanks.
First of all, I would like to highlight that we consider ESCAP as an additional platform for cooperation that serves the United Nations regional hub promoting cooperation among countries to achieve inclusive and sustainable development. Moreover, in the recent years, ESCAP has emerged as a strong regional think tank offering countries sound analytical products that shed insight into the evolving economic and social dynamics of the region. Uh, Bearing in mind that 2020 marks the second anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic as well, and while an end to the pandemic is in sight, and the consequences will be felt for decades for calm, Asia and Pacific region must seize every opportunity to accelerate the progress. At the same time, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development should become as a top priority guideline for all activities in ESCAP. The region must use the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap for a fairer recovery. I think the issues related alternative data sources and more focus on modern data collection and dissemination methods would be much more interesting personally for me for future cafes. This would be highly appreciated by Geostat.
Thank you so much. If we can come
Thank
to, let's change it around a bit. Sorry, to Fiji. Maria, if you don't mind sharing your ideas, it would be great to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So I guess the question was on any topics or subjects that we would like us Stats Café to focus on. One I would like to mention here is the because the department is currently working on greater engagement with data providers and users. So we would really like to see more of how we are sharing experiences on governing data in reviewing statistical acts and so forth. The challenge of collecting data, what works best for other countries. On the same note, what international data compacts or guidelines had worked best to influence other countries' National Statistics Office work to improve the use of data that's being produced. The second point I would like to make is the meeting of the needs of users. Firstly, is in how a country's national data strategy or strategies or user engagement process had changed to respond the new demand by users, including other actors in government. The second point of number two is to, apart from tracking page views, tracking citations of data in publication and independent reviews, etc., what we'd really like to see is the experiences of other countries on what other data compacts or guidelines has really influenced the National Statistics Office work to improve the use of data that's been produced. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing those. Can we, I'm just going to come to Mongolia, Mr. Batdaval, but whilst I'm doing that as well, if there are other people in the audience that would like to share any reflections from what you've heard, or just your own kind of views, can you raise your hands, and then I'll be able to come to you after we've heard from Mongolia and Australia, if that's okay. But it'd be really helpful, and we do want to hear from more people, so do just digitally raise your hands, and then I'll know to come to you in a minute. But over to you, Mr. Batdaval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. With regards to future topics, we've been discussing internally, and the first idea could be quality control for the primary data collection and then admin data methods. I think it's really important, as our colleague from Thailand mentioned, because the cooperation of the households and then the entities have become a little bit difficult after the COVID. So maybe we should explore new technological ways to see the quality control and the data gathering methods. I think this is the good timing to discuss these issues. And secondly, the integrated database use of the admin data to calculate the SDG indicators could be one of the good examples, because currently the UN office in Mongolia has just last week they agreed with the strategic priorities with the Mongolian government, and we have it's our duty as an NSO to produce these SDG indicators, to make the indicators available. So under that, if we try to do surveys using to make some indicators available, it's quite costly for us. And our preliminary studies have shown that some of the indicators can be driven from the admin data. So I think sharing our experiences in producing the SDG indicators using admin data could be one of the good topics to be discussed among us. And lastly, I could say that since we are talking about data literacy and then use of data for the evidence-based decision making, to promote the data for the evidence-based decision making, we can talk about good examples of how we applied the certain data. For example, it could be like traditional statistical indicators, or it could be new methods like data sources that was very effective for the decision making for the country. So we can, do experience sharing among our colleagues, because now the role, I think we are in the stage of the changing environment for the national statistical offices, especially the public and the government requires more and more from the NSOs. They want more disaggregated data, more. So we have to learn from our colleagues, like what could be the best ways to fit these needs in the future. So that's all from our point of view. Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks so much. I think, yeah, that's very true. I think we're all experiencing that the demands on data producers are going up and up all the time, aren't they? They want more disaggregate, more granular data, more timely data on all kinds of topics that we've never even been thinking of before. And that means, as others have been saying, we need to develop new skills, new ways of working, new coordination mechanisms. Puts us all under a lot more pressure, but a lot more opportunities as well. I just wanted to come finally, not last but not least, Gemma, to any reflections you might have on what are the kind of future topics, and then we'll go back to back to the audience. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachel. So I still see a place, I think, what we've heard here today, a lot of interest in experience sharing across the region. And that's on very technical topics, like I saw in the chat box, you know, technical topics like small area estimation, you know, between the real technicians, but also at the leadership level, hearing experiences about how do we, you know, literacy and communication and building the skills of our users. But the reflection I'd like to offer here builds on something that Maria from Fiji was saying, Rachel, that often the statistical community are talking to each other. We all talk to one another, we meet up one another, and we all sort of think we know what our actual use, and we get together as data producers and we talk to one another as producers. And I really was quite taken with Maria's suggestion there about, could the cafe be a mechanism for hearing from our users, like people who are using the statistics that we're producing. And I'm thinking here, for instance, at the global level, you know, have we ever heard, you know, we could maybe facilitate the users of the Sendai disaster risk reduction report or the users of the SDG reports, and hear from them to say, did we deliver good quality data? Did we deliver the data that they needed? What were some of the questions that arose as they were using our data? I'm even thinking of agencies like the International Labour Organization, ILO, who use our labour force survey statistics. You know, are we delivering good labour force statistics? How is the ILO using our labour force statistics? You know, what else would they like to see? Are we delivering too much, not enough, not in the right format? So I'm just wondering if the reflection, or and particularly as we move towards the next World Data Forum, which is meant to be a gathering of users and producers, could we have more users join us at the cafe series, given it's only 1 or 2 hours of their time, and quite flexible timing. I'm just wondering whether the UN ESCAP could facilitate some of that, Rachel. Either your own users like the ILO or the SDG unit in New York, or country users, bringing some users together from the country level as well. I think that would be could be quite tricky to do, but I think nothing's beyond you there at ESCAP, Rachel. I'm sure you could make it happen.
Thank you, Gemma. No, and thank you for all those great ideas. I think you're right. It is a really good opportunity to try and kind of make that link up a lot more, and make sure that what we're doing is really linked to what's needed. So we can definitely have a think through on that. I was going to mention the World Data Forum, because that is the opportunity to really engage. The call for proposals is out at the moment. There's a webinar on it next week, which we can send around details of. But if anybody is interested in organising a session as well, then do get in touch with us and we can see if we can help in terms of putting people together, because I think from past experience, they're very interested in hearing from groups of countries that can kind of do something together. So if you want a hand kind of doing that and you've got an idea for a session but not it fully worked through, do please get in touch with me or others at ESCAP, and we will do what we can to try and do that. And I think, I mean, as Gemma and Maria have said, that link up to users as well is meant to be a really key part of the World Data Forum. So it is a real opportunity for us to do that, and perhaps to showcase some of the great ways that our region has been doing it. Also, I would say in the past, Asia Pacific has not been perhaps as engaged in those World Data Forum kind of discussions as some of the other regions. Africa have been the main kind of region that have been very engaged, but there's a real opportunity this time because it's in our region and taking place in China. It creates, one, it's easier to get to for a physical kind of meeting, which would be really great, but also even if we're not able to do it physically and if it's some kind of hybrid event, being at least in a more similar time zone creates a lot more opportunities, as well, as we won't be requiring people to get up at 2 a.m. like I know some people who are presenting at the last one were having to do from some of the Pacific Islands. So really great opportunity there. Do please get in touch. Did anybody else, I haven't seen, maybe it's that I can't see, did any participants want to add anything? Just before we leave, you'll have to shout, because I can't see anybody putting up their hands, and I know we're just about out of time. In terms of the polling, I have been looking at that. Machine learning has come up in the centre as being one of the ones that people are really interested in. Big data, like we were saying, data use, data literacy, and data governance and data stewardship. So that's a lot more topics. Did anybody else want to come in with any quick reflections, or if not, so I'm just trying to look at my screens to make sure I'm not accidentally missing anybody. I can't see any. But this isn't the end of it. Obviously, we're always very, very open. So if you do have any further reflections and thoughts as we go away from today's meeting, do please get in touch. Let us know about it. But what I wanted to say was huge thank you to everyone. But, you know, in terms of your part, thank you for the organisers who so faithfully put all of the information together and do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure, as we've done in today's Stats Cafe, that everything runs really smoothly. So we really appreciate the team at ESCAP that have been kind of doing all the hard work to kind of keep things going. Thanks especially to Gemma as well for you know, kind of starting this series and under her leadership. But thanks to everyone who's been involved as panelists, as presenters, but also as well very much the audience as well, because that's who we're doing it from. So thank you so much to everyone. Happy 2-year anniversary. Yeah, and we look forward to many more sessions. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.